Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for our exclusive webinar, PrintVis, The Life of a Job with Mark Vickers. We're very thrilled to have you all here. Today's webinar is expected to take about 1 hour of your time, leaving some room for questions at the end. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to check out the Sabre Limited YouTube channel and subscribe to stay up to date with all our new content. If you check in the chat window, you'll see a direct link to all of our web socials, the website, and one of our emails so that you can give us a contact if you'd like. During the webinar, everyone will be in a listen-only mode just to make sure that we have the best quality. So if you do have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, these can easily be submitted in the chat panel or just wait until the end to ask them, and our experts will take up all the questions at the end of the session. Throughout this session, Mark is going to guide us through the entire life cycle of a print job, showcasing the efficiency and effectiveness of PrintVis and Microsoft Dynamics 365 in action. But before that, I'd like to introduce Robert Jolliffe, the president of Sabre Limited. Robert, could you give us a little background on PrintVis and Microsoft Dynamics?
I sure can. Hey, thank you everybody for attending today. It's great to see some attendees to our first webinar on PrintVis in 2023. I think the last time we did this was about 2021. So I'm Rob Jolliffe. I'm president of Sabre Limited, and let me just give you a little bit of today's agenda. So I'm going to give us some background about Sabre and PrintVis, explain a little bit of what each company is and how we're related to each other. In the print ERP or MIS software industry, it's a little bit unusual, but hopefully we can explain it and you can understand the model. I'm also going to talk about PrintVis and Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central and how they are associated and related to one another. And then we're going to do a demo, which Mark is going to be leading. We're going to walk through some of this demo. Will be pre sort of screenshotted images because it's easier to be able to highlight things. And then Mark's going to open the software up and get right into it and do some activities in the software. So about Sabre and PrintVis. Sabre Limited is, we like to consider us the premier graphics and general manufacturing partner. So graphics manufacturing or general, more traditional manufacturing. Our background was in the more traditional manufacturing. We've recently, in the last 8 years, entered into the print MIS industry. Located in Cambridge, Ontario, we have about 30 full-time equivalent staff. Those staff are not only in Ontario, Canada, they're all over the world. We are exclusively manufacturing and supply chain and exclusively Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. So that, you know, we're here for a PrintVis presentation. So what is PrintVis? PrintVis is an add-on product for Business Central. We've completed about 15 PrintVis implementations since 2017. That's increasing rapidly. PrintVis entered the market in North America many years ago, but really didn't get much traction. People didn't know what it was, but as Microsoft released their Dynamics 365 Business Central product, which used to be called NAV, PrintVis has really picked up. And so thank you for your interest in the product. So as I mentioned, PrintVis has been around for a long time. They were founded in 1997 in Denmark, became a major print MIS solution in Europe in the 2000s, and founding member of the CIP4 and GP partners groups. So they're founding member of the JDF standard. They actually hosted the 2018 meeting. There were, at various times, up to 1,300 new PrintVis customers sold in Europe. Those customers, though, obviously with the print industry from the 90s till today, when PrintVis started, many of them are no longer using the product because they're not in business, but that was the total number of sales. So there's a lot of background behind the product and a lot of depth in it. As of the time I wrote, I think this is wrong now because Sabre's got over 15 clients. I think there's probably more like 30 or 40 customers in North America using the product. And as I mentioned, that's accelerating. The long-term goal of PrintVis is to become a market leader in MIS ERP for the print industry in North America. One last little comment about this. I don't think I have a slide on it. One of the partners that is partnering with PrintVis and selling the product is Kodak. So the Kodak is listed PrintVis on their Printergy Cloud implementation solutions, and we work with Kodak on some of their product integrations as well. So Sabre Limited, we became a PrintVis partner around 2017. And the reason we became a partner of PrintVis is I walked into a label manufacturer in the Toronto, Ontario area. I was selling what used to be called Dynamics NAV, showed it to the customer with PrintVis. I had the people from PrintVis demonstrate the PrintVis capabilities. The owner of the company stopped me in the middle of the demo and said, "I've seen enough." To which I thought he was going to say, "Get out of my boardroom." But he actually said, "This is exactly what we do in our business. How much is this product?" And then he threw me out of his boardroom. But it's good for a quick laugh. In July, we hired Mark Vickers, who's going to be doing the presentation today. Mark has a tremendous industry expertise. We knew we didn't have that expertise, so we wanted somebody who came from the print industry. By 2020, we were the premier North American implementation partner. We were doing more implementations than any of the other partners. And I have now increased the number from the previous slide to 17. So I did go out and find that we had a couple of extras, and I have to update the second slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark. So Mark can get in and he can talk to you a little bit about the product and show you some of the product features and capabilities. Take it away, Mark.
All right, great. Thanks, Rob. Welcome, everybody. And again, from my side, thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and join us. We're going to go through some slides to highlight areas to show you and help you to understand a little bit about what is PrintVis, what does it do, how do you work through it, and how does it deal with this. At the end, we're going to do a short little demo to illustrate, so it is actually live. And we're going to focus today a little bit on the label industry. The software is designed out of the box to be worked on in different industries, which is great if you happen to be a printer who's both doing flexo packaging and label printing, all that kind of stuff. One software, you don't need different modules, but we're going to focus on the label one today. So we're going to start by taking a look at the role center. What is a role center? And I'll touch on that. And then how do we navigate in the system? A little bit of that stuff. We're going to show an items card, a customer card. Just items or something. It's the table that the system uses to track and control the your inventory, whether it be finished good or raw materials, that kind of stuff. I'm going to touch on cases. We'll define what is a case. It's a PrintVis term, basically for the order, but I'll give it a little bit more explanation. It warrants its own slide. Let's jump through into the role center. So here you are at a role center here, and I'll just kind of grab my laser pointer here, old fancy thing. So up the top, you can see I have a set of drop-down menus that I can click on here, and it would bring out some options to go directly to a function that I want. I could look at inventory, go to my items table. I could go to sales. I could go to my customers. Or I have this level here, which gives me some direct access points. I can click on case management. It'll give me my list of all my cases. Again, those are like the jobs. Think of it that way for now. I have this action set right here that I could go in and actually create a request for a case request. I could go directly to a quote level, or I don't even need an estimate or a quote. Customer says, hey, I just need an order, reorder. I can go directly to an order. So these are actions. When I click on them, they will actually just right away fire something up. Down this section here, you see these large green tiles. These tiles are things that we use for PrintVis cases and other areas in Business Central as well. It's all seamless, and I'll point that out. But these are showing me the number of cases that I'm responsible to do and act on, to do something in the system and move it along. These are the cases that I'm registered as the coordinator. They just happen to be the same number today in this sample, but that's generally what it's doing. And this one is showing cases delayed. Think of these as to-do lists. That's really what it's going to do. It's going to filter down and say, okay, here's what you have to do. I click on this, it'll give me the list, and I just work my way through it. So typically somebody would sign in the morning at the beginning of their shift, and this would be their dashboard. Now we have different dashboards based on what we call profiles. So this, for example, is for someone in accounting. Again, it's got some similarities about cases and cases up creating them. And the menus, very similar layout, but you can see the list is different now. It has this assortment of different kind of functions and features that an accounting person might be looking at. accounts receivable, accounts payable. Here's one for trial balances, account scheduling. So these are based on the type of work the person does in the company. Take a look at another one. Here's one for shop floor. This is your production workers on the shop floor production. These are a list of the jobs that they would work on. We'll delve into this a little bit more, a little bit later on in the slides. And you can see here, this is just, I wanted to show this one. This is a list of the profiles that come in the box when you bring in PrintVis. These ones down here are Business Central. The ones up here get added as, because this is a PrintVis software with that part of PrintVis that Rob talked about added to the base Business Central for Microsoft. So you can see this, but this is also a good point to show that this is seamless. So the user is not going to see the difference. What is PrintVis? What is, we often get this question. Well, you know, how does the user get to the PrintVis sections and which part is Business Central? It's seamless in the system. It's just the way it works. Let's touch on some navigation principles. Well, of course, you already saw that I can go in here and I can click on these things to navigate, but I can also go and up in here, I have this little icon that's available on every page. We're using the browser. And it's like the magnifying glass. When I click on it, it brings this up. And when I go in here, I can use this almost like Google search. I can go in and start to type in this case example, I'm using case management, and it will immediately start to filter and search my options based on what I start to type. So it's kind of easy to, if you don't quite remember, just even get close to it and you can start to find stuff. In this case, I might click case list and it'll take me directly to that case list page with all my cases. Here we are at a customer card. So it's very typical of all the cards. I have basic header information up here and some menus. I can click on these to get sub-menus that gives me my navigation ability within the case card. Up here, we have things like editable, non-editable. I can export this to Excel. It works very well with plays well with other Microsoft products, so to speak. So we all like to use Excel, so we can export a lot of things to Excel. I can add a new one or I can delete this if I have the permission. I have some basic general information, but another point to note is whenever we see a green reference, like a number here, or you can see over here, I have some green references. These allow me to drill in. So the concept is I can have my base information. Here's my total. I could click on this and drill into it, and it would probably show me the broken down list of the local currency. Based on local currency, it would be the balance for this customer. This is an item card. I've chosen to close all these to start with. You can see just, we can break them down so it's not, you know, we can open up or close so we get to focus on what we want. Here I can actually, as a user, I can just define what are the highlight areas I need to see readily so I can make this available. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and click on General, and it will open up the tab. You can see how it opens and closes. And then this gives me access in this tab to the fields that are part of this. As you can start to see, there are literally hundreds of fields in the system, and that's what we help to do in our implementation. We will help you to figure out which ones you need, how to set them up, and how they work. Let's talk about cases for a minute. So what is a case? A case is like a folder. We think of it sort of, everybody tends to have a job folder or an envelope or something that works its way through production. This electronically now is a case. Will contain things like the request by the customer, the quote that you create, which then could become the order. It's all in one, it's all there. We can use Microsoft SharePoint, link to that. And by the case, somebody could have a link or get access to the artwork that's been supplied or notes or any documents that they've sent along. So in this case, think of this as a single source that holds everything you need for the RFQ to the invoice. So this is a case card. So again, we have our information, very common look you've seen already. We've got our customer information. This is the case information. We help you design and sort of identify your structure of order types and product groups, but you know, the one connects the other. You can put our field name. what I'm going to do is I just want to highlight this area in here to start with. And this, every time I create one, it creates a unique ID number. This is controlled by the system. Until I make it a status code, and I'll touch on that in a minute, of quote, these numbers don't appear. I just have it identified as a case ID. Once it becomes a quote, we assign an official quote number out of your number series. These number series can be set up alphanumerically. They can match your existing system, that kind of stuff. And we'll touch on that in a bit. Up here, we can see the idea that, as I said, to a SharePoint, we can click and get that folder structure. We can create documents and do things there. The status code. A status code is how we move the case from its life, from the start of the RFQ all the way through. This one happens to be on production, but I'll just kind of show you a list of them. Here's a full list of my status codes. They might start at a request, then it becomes a quote, then it goes to a quote sent. We can also define who's responsible at any of these. So the idea here is the quote might be done by the estimator, but they move it to quote sent. It becomes the sales rep's responsibility now to go and follow up with the customer and say, a week, how do we do with the quote? Are we getting any better? Are we is there anything else I can help you with? So it's like a bit of a mini CRM in that sense. And then it might become an order, might go into prepping for the order, then into plan. We'll touch on these a little bit in the live part. But any of these can be deleted, changed. You can have different flows based on different order types, like a repeat versus a new order. Repeat doesn't need all this quote stage. So you can create different workflows of status codes for your different needs. Okay, back at the case card. I just want to highlight in this next area. So now we're down at the job level. We've got this quote line. So this is defining my definition of it started as the quote, but you'll notice there's two lines, and I'm going to touch on this as this became an order and assigned the order number. What it also did is it copied the line. So we don't replace the quote. So if you had 3 or 4 different versions of quotes here, different quantities, different stocks, you maintain all of them, which is great because sometimes we all know it becomes an order. They wanted the 65,000, then they send the artwork, or they come to you a week later and say, oh, we've changed our mind. We've decided to go back to we want to go up to our 70,000 or 75,000. So you don't have to restructure things. It's all there available, and it's there as information once it's archived for reuse later on the next quote or next order. So let's touch on a few other features in the system. We have shop floor, shipping, and invoicing. So here we are back on my shop floor. And basically what this is doing is the tiles are set up as, these tiles are presented as a setup by the scheduler. And they would follow basically from the top left in the order that's been suggested by scheduling to follow their day. So this is Peter Printer here, funny names, but Peter Printer is running the Mark Andy 10-inch, and these are the jobs he's supposed to do, communicated from scheduling. But you can also select any tile. So I'm going to go ahead and select this tile. This brings us to the production, the shop floor production view. And I'll touch on some of these other tabs, but the main section is for starting and stopping the clock to record labor time. So when the operator comes in, the first thing they'll probably do is do make ready and stuff. I'm going to sort of pretend that I've already done some make ready, but I'm going to click here to production, and it turns green. I'm recording production time. Well, it's doing a little bit of that. Let's just touch on a few highlights that are in this area. We can have a QA checklist. You can have, for any questions like control areas you want them to check. Hey, did I pick the right stock? Did I pick? You can have the operator confirm that, and now you've got a record of that being happened. Great for customers that want a QA checklist trial or ability to track that and give that information back to them. Comments, I can add a comment to the order for the future. I can make a note from. So this is a way that you can the shop floor operator can communicate back to your scheduler or to the coordinator information about live stuff. We can consume the material here. You have the choice that the operator can consume it. There's a lot of, especially substrates, they're expensive, and you want to capture exactly how much, which one was used and how much of it did the operator actually use. So those tend to be consumed on the shop floor. But for some of the lesser items like inks, they're pretty hard to get an operator to do it. You can have them auto-consume from the system. There's a setup that we can follow. It will take the estimated values and it will go ahead and run those through as the costings. I can pause or stop, or I can complete this operation. The other area down below here, think of these as being able to record the machine downtimes. So, if I have a problem with the material, the operator can click here, and it's now going to show a separate recording of time that will allow you to go to example to follow up with the vendor and say, hey, we had some problems with the material. Here's my examples of the problem. And by the way, we lost about 45 minutes worth of production time. Anything you could do to recoup that would be appreciated. Now you've got some tracking that's going on. So now, while this has been running, let's take a look at what's been happening in the scheduling. So here I am back in the case. I've opened up the scheduling or planning line specifically for this case. This is my 222 order. And I'll explain. These are planning lines. They're generated from the estimate. They grab the estimated times and stuff that we've had, and they create these planning unit times, which are going to be used for the schedule. Initially, this wouldn't necessarily be populated. This was an action that I'll show on the live part. But we would have a requested delivery date from the customer, and I'd indicate the start with the earliest. Maybe the file isn't ready till next week. And when I can schedule this based on forward scheduling. So from the start date forward, the earliest I could do this, or backward scheduling or bottleneck. We can do that aspect. And when I click on these, it's going to look for based on these times and these rules, it will find capacity available to be able to fit this into my schedule. So the other thing I wanted to show here is what's nice about this is it's real-time reaction from the shop floor. So I can actually see these two are already being completed. My plates have been made, they've been mounted, and I'm actually running press. So no more do your people have to keep running to the back to find out where's the job. Is it being worked on yet? They can look at that, okay? And the other thing that we can do is that the system can manually, you could choose to manually schedule. You don't have to do it this way. Some people take it and they just say, hey, this is all on the scheduler to just manually schedule this. There's also the option, you can do an option add-on for a PrintVis planning board, which is your Gantt scheduling. So there is one available if you'd like to do that. But we have some customers that they don't use it. They just use the standard scheduling in the system. There's a production plan view that the scheduler can look at where they see all jobs, all machines. They like to use that because they can filter their view to say, hey, show me all of the jobs on this press that run four-color process that use these stocks. Now they can block those in place to be one after the other and what days and when they want to run them, maybe at the start of the shift, and that way you're able to control it for efficiency. So let's pretend we've gone a few hours later. Now what we've got is we've got some costing going on. And so this is a cost summary report in the system. I can see here, this is what was quoted. Gives me my breakdowns of materials and subcontracting. If I do any outside purchasing, we can handle that. It can show your contribution margins, direct hours, totals, all this kind of stuff. So this is for the quote. We have another column that is for the order, because remember I said you could have a variation from the quote to the order, so you can see the comparison of the two. But now we're pulling in actual costs. Okay, and so it's taking the shop floor data and the materials consumed, and it's putting them together in an analysis that we can now compare. Now these are negative numbers, but that's because I haven't invoiced yet. So I'm not really going to gain profit till I start asking for money from my customer. So once this is invoiced, this would show what was invoiced, and it would balance out to give you your full comparison. From here, I can also drill in and see some actual details. So here I've clicked on my hour entries. I get to see all of the actual labor lines posted by the date, by the operator, by the function. This was production. I could have make ready production, whatever we set up to be recorded. hours that have been recorded, my costs. Here you can see an actual comment that was made from production floor. It's going to show back here, that kind of stuff. I can actually go and click on the entries, or sorry, the item entries. This will give me a list of the materials that have been posted against the job, and now they've been costed to the case and consumed from the inventory, so it's been removed. This is a nice handy report. Usually at job costing, at the end of the job, people like to see how did it do. So this will give me a comparison of the actual order estimate versus the actual recorded times, but in a much more detailed breakdown. So I can do the side-by-side comparison in each, my plating, my mounting, my production, how much was my make ready for hours versus actual, what was the deviation, and this is the summaries. So a nice little handy report comes with the system. Take a quick look at shipping. Within the case, I can ship to multiple shipments. Each card has the data that I need. How much am I shipping? How much is requested? What are the dates? I can use these to produce some packing slips, some skid labels, all of the data that we need to be able to do our shipping handling. We can do multiple shipments. So I can just show here that if you were someone doing a large distribution, I could create them manually, but that's kind of tedious. So I can actually leverage this to import from Excel a distribution of 100 more locations, and it'll populate this table with the quantities and dates and all the information that I have, the addresses, their ship to addresses for the customers, multiple addresses can easily be accessed. We can also connect to a third-party shipping software like EasyPost for rate shopping and processing shipments. There's a shipper's page to help them see, what do I have to ship today? I've got all my today's work, what's tomorrow, all that kind of stuff. So things to make the job more efficient. Touch on invoicing. On the invoicing side, I'm back at my case. What I can do is I can go up here to my invoice guide and click here, and it opens up a blank invoice to the customer. Now, I could manually enter these. Again, it's a little bit time consuming. So I'm going to leverage this area up in here called the invoice template guide. When I click on this line, I'll get a drop-down list, and I can have multiple templates configured for how I want the invoice to represent itself. And it pulls all the data out of my system for this case and populates it on my invoice. This is great when you have different products that have different, you invoice, the look and feel of the invoice is different for different products. Or you might even have a customer that dictates to you and says, hey, if you do my work, I have to have my invoices this way for my accounting department. So you could spell it out and have it specifically and pre-assign it so that every time you do that customer, it automatically uses that. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on the job one. And it goes ahead and you can see it's just gone and pulled the data out of it. So I've got my static line says regarding, and it pulls the order number, gives me my job name, and some little script about that I did 10,000 labels in 4-color, and it pulls the amount, whether I told it to do invoice based on the invoice based on the estimate or on the order. All of that is done. And when I go and post this, it's going to hit my GL with all the subledger entries, everything. It's a full accounting package along with it. One last little section we'll do, and then we'll jump to our live part. On the estimating, I want to show a little bit. We've touched on the job lines and what they do, but I'm going to explain there's the job items. This is the component part. And I'll explain the difference between the two, and then we'll ultimately get to what are the calculation units, which are kind of like the bombs and routings of the order. So again, back on my case, I have these job lines. Here's an example where I've got more than one option for my estimate, and it became the customer decided to go with the 10,000 on this one. So we have our 10,000. I would normally go up here under manage, and there'd be a job card menu. So I would click on that, and it would bring up this job card. And this is what we have this gives me the details of the components needed for this job. Now, in this example, it's a 1-to-1. I could, let's say we had 5,000 of the blue version and 5,000 of a yellow version. Sorry, 5,000 of each. These could be separate elements with different quantities. I could have different size labels. This could be two different components. Like if we do a label a fixed job, The one job line could be the label itself, and the second one would be the component we affix to. In my example, it's just the one, but I can use it now and define more details about the job itself. I can pick which roll material do I want to use. This is going to use my 5-inch roll of BOPP material. I can pick the press. I'm using my 10-inch Mark Andy. I can select the die. Now I'll show a little bit of that. The system comes complete with the ability to handle your dies, your cylindrical dies, or other types of dies if you're, depending on how you do it, digital or litho, flexo. So this is the job item line that's up here that we've just talked about. And from here, we could go into estimating, and it would show me all of the actual calculation units. These are the calculation units here. This is my plate. This is my mounting of the plates. So each one has a separate calculation detail. When I run it, you see I just moved from highlighting this area. I'll go back. You can see I'm highlighting the plate and it's showing me my plate details. When I go to the next screen, I'm highlighting my press and it's giving me all the details for the press run. Okay, so these are my calculation details. That is how I actually want to go about estimating or calculating, and it mirrors to what we actually do in production. I might have, and it's tied to the calculation unit that's up here, and that's just to show this whole link together. Okay, so as I change each one, I get all my different details. So what's in the calculation detail? I'm using this as an example. I want to identify the calculation for how much time do I need to do my make ready? Well, we all know that it takes longer to do 4 plates than 2 plates. It's all based on that. So this line leverages formulas in PrintVis. We have a few of them on each of these lines. The system comes with a couple of thousand out of the box ones. And they basically can identify fields and we can create our own. It's a bit like Excel formulas. So I have the power to be able to create, you can create your own formulas to be able to, identify a value. What the formula does is return a value in my quantity field. So this one is to look up how many plates do I need. It says 4. 4-color job. I need the 4 plates. There's only one layout. It has a speed table that's used to allow me to create different parameters in the speed. So no matter how many, all the information, different parameters to use at different speeds. This is great for, we've got our experienced people who say, I just know that under these conditions, this is the rate of speed. These can be interpolated into these speed tables so the system can repeatedly and automatically create these answers. It takes this speed to come up by taking this value here and dividing it into this 4 to come up with the 0.2 hours, which of course will be used in scheduling, but it's applying it to give me my amount. This is my $141 an hour of cost applied to the 0.2 for my cost factor. And this is my sell price with markups to give me my sell on this unit. So this actual operation of 0.2 for plate makerity is $46.42. Let's take a look at another one. This is my print run. This formula is giving me how many feet do I need for this job. This speed table is saying I run it under these conditions at approximately 12,000 feet per hour. So it divides this into this to come up with the amount of time multiplied by the rate is each of these lines. These can be manually overridden if you want. You can adjust them on the fly, but these are my base settings that you would end up creating. We help you create those. This all gets totaled up into this area up here. Okay. So now let's take a look at the software. So I'm going to actually go in and do one. So I'm just going to bring this over and we'll reshare based on my background. So here I am at my roll center. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and I'm going to do 2 scenarios because we've got about 5 minutes. So I'm going to try and get these squeezed in pretty quick, 5 or 7 minutes. The first one is going to be like a reorder. So I've already got, this is something that I produce for my customer on a regular basis. I put it in my warehouse maybe. I've got what we call a finished good item, and I'm going to leverage the ability to have a template of how I produce this, and you'll see how quickly we can do this. I'm going to paste order. I'm going to go direct to an order. Don't need an estimate. Customers emailed in, said, hey, I need 50,000 of my blue label that you've run for me 6 months ago. So I put in my customer to start with because I need a customer for an order. Up until that point, I don't. What it's going to do is I click OK, and it's going to search the system and say, well, wait a minute, you've got more than one Candoxi. Which one do you need? If it only found one, it would have just automatically placed it. I'm going to use Candoxi Canada today. And there's my stuff. I could put in a contact. I don't have one for this one, but just going to go in and I can select it if I want. I can do multiple contacts from one customer. I'm going to pick the order type, direct, and I'm going to pick my product group, which is for a custom label. I could leverage a base template to automatically, that's what all of these, but I wanted to show you something, so I took it out of this one. It doesn't exist, so it's not going to do any template function at this point. And I'm just going to give it a name. I called it a blue label. Let's do a blue label. You can see it's already assigned the ID. Because it's an order, I have my order number series assigned. It's at status code order, and actually, according to my setup, Conrad, the coordinator, is going to be responsible for this, but I'm going to look after Conrad's job for now. So I've got no information here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and pick the item, the finished good item. There's all my items, my finished good items. It's filtered on that, but let's search for the one I want. So I think the customer called it a blue something. Oh, there it is. It's my label finished good 07, new label. I'm going to say OK. What this has done is it's gone in and it's populated, except for the quantity, because I didn't want that. I could say here's the regular quantity, but I got one repeat. It's 5x3 and it prints in 4-color process. So now let's plug in the quantity. They wanted for 50,000. Okay, so it's already gone and run through and produced my price. Now, to see what it's done, I'm going to go to the job card. Remember, we had this, and this is the material that they run it on. I usually run on a 10-inch. I could flip this over to a 12-inch once I look at my inventory at the order at the prep stage and say, hey, I don't have any 10-inch, but I got some 12-inch. I'm going to run it. I might switch this to the 13-inch press, use an adapter, run the 10-inch die. All those combinations are possible within the system. From here, I'm going to click on my estimating page, and you can see I already have everything. Now, I mean, I had this in here. Maybe I leave this in because I might have to redo the plate, but I've checked it. The plate's okay, so I can just delete it. Because it's a template, I can make changes to it. And that's why I want to illustrate. It just copies it. Okay, so I've removed it, and now I'm good to go. Okay, there's my revised price. I could now send this off, get my order confirmation, the whole bit. But what I do want to show is let's move it through to a next stage. So I'm going to use change status, and it's going to go to prep. Okay, and I could now do this prep work. I become responsible to do the prep work, so it would have changed on my dashboard. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to the status code of planning, because I can see that planning is next. It's going to give me an error message. There it is. It's a warning message. I set it up this way. I can make it stop, but I can do it as a warning. I didn't have a date. In order to plan it, we need some dates. So it's just allowed it to go to planning, but I'm just going to go in here and put in my requested date. And let's say the customer wants this next week Friday. There's the 14th. I put in my date. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here to my planning, like I was showing before in the slides. There's my planning units coming from my estimating with my planned hours. I've got this date. I don't have any start times. It's not planned. I don't have to do this. You could have a scheduler do this in the full production plan. But a lot of people like this because we can just have, as the order comes in, we can auto schedule it into the system so that it just shows everything that we need to. We can see our capacities, we can plan ahead, and the scheduler focuses on fine tuning the schedule in the near future. Okay, so I'm going to put today's, let's say we can't start it until tomorrow, the 29th. And so now I'm going to just run from the beginning, and there it's gone. These are milestones. We can create milestones of, and we can assign when does the customer, yeah, it didn't get approved. I can reschedule. So, hey, it was late getting the proof approval, those kind of things. These are just milestones that we have in here. And again, we would help you set up how you would want to run the system, but you can see it's gone in and scheduled. Now, obviously, I don't have a lot of work in my plant right now. It can do this all in one day by tomorrow. But if there was more capacity, it might have said, hey, I can run this on tomorrow, I can make the plates, but I can't run the press until next week. Maybe I've got a placeholder in here that says, when does my material arrive? And my, my orders, my purchase order drives the fact that, hey, I might not have my material on floor till late next week. So I want the press to run after that. So all of this would auto schedule itself properly. And now I'm scheduled. There you go. Okay. I got one quick one to finish up, and then we're going to ready for questions and answers that you might have. You might say, hey, Mark, that's great. However, I've watched you. I know you pre-planned all this and you got it. What if I just had to do one from scratch? Is that going to take me forever to do? So let's just do a quick one. So we're going to create a base request. I have nothing. I have no information. I can see down here, you can see I have nothing. It's empty. I have no estimate, no anything. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to pick a customer. This is for Andrew. I can pick a different contact if I want. Anyway, I'm just going to go in there. Yeah, we've just got Andrew. And so I'm going to pick my order type, direct. I'm going to do again my custom label so I don't force a template in. And it's done all my regular stuff. I'm going to go in here and put in a quantity of 75,000. It's got one repeat. The size is 3 by 2 inches. And I want the front to be 4 colors. I've got this done. Now I'm going to go to my job card. Again, it's going to start out blank. So I create that first form to give me my job component detail. Now, I know for any of I think we have a few label printers in our midst. So, and I know from experiences I've had with customers and stuff that die library is a huge thing. It drives a lot of your business. You might have anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 dies. And the biggest thing when we quote a new job is the customers ask for something. Do I have something that works? So there's a fair bit to searching the dies. For the die, I could go in and do a search parameter around the sizes and say, hey, give me the closest fit to a 3 by 2. But I'm going to leverage this tool here just so I can quickly show. Specifically, and most used with labels, is I can define the distance around or the distance front. So give me anything. I'll take a dead split on this one up to a maximum 1/2 inch. I can put the distance across. These are just filtering parameters to help me search what's in my library in the combinations I can use it. You'll see that in a minute. So we're not going to put a corner radius. We'll just see customer says they wanted a rectangle. I've picked my different shape criteria. So I've got a rectangle. And now I'm going to go up here and say, apply filters. It gives me this list. And it's taken all my setup that I've done ahead, and it's gone through and said, well, based on that 3 by 2 and this criteria, here's the dies you have available. Or you have a magnetic die you could use, the DM1002, or you have the 16. They both have the same repeat cutoff. They're both 100 teeth per unit. So we know all this, and it gives me some feedback on the feet that I'll use, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to, for the sake of the demonstration, I'm just going to pick this one, and you'll see when I click OK, it's already loaded the press. It's giving me my options for my press. Do I need a turn bar? Do I need hot stamping, folding unit? All this stuff. I'm not going to add one today because I want to add a slitter offline. It brings up my inks. Can I change my inks? I've set my system to default on process, but you can do whatever you like. So now I've got my line. You can see it's picked my press for me. It's grabbed the die. It's everything I need, but I just need to add my substrate. So I'm going to go in here for BOPP. I'm going to run a 10-inch on this one. I've picked my material. It's confirmed my numbers up. I've gone to my estimate. Got my flexo plate, my mounting, my substrate. This is how I've configured it. And now if I just need to add anything to this, I can just go here. I can filter on these calculation units that I have. I'm going to pick my slitter, add that. Again, we'll box it, we'll shrink wrap it off the end of the unit. And there we go. There's for my rolls. And I'm all done. So that's it for the demo. Let's open it up to questions.
If anybody wants to see the scheduling board, because we didn't show the graphical scheduling board, Mark, if you reopen the PowerPoint,
okay,
there's a slide near the end now with a video. And we're open to questions. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, if you're able to do that, please feel free to ask any questions. Jill has her hand up. Hi, Jill.
Yeah. Do you do anything with layouts when you're creating?
Just give me 1 second. We can see a layout, but and I do advise customers with this when I get into trainings. PrintVis is not a layout software. So what they found is they tried at one point, but I think they just recognized that there are lots of softwares in the market that are very specific to very specific printing industries that have requirements. They're very good at it. So what we would look to do is interface with those so that you could create a case, create the order, and pass that through. Like ESCO ArtiusCAD is one, for example, that a lot of label printers use. And we have out of the box integrations preset to get you started on integrating with ESCO and a couple of the others. And so we would recommend doing layouts that way.
Okay, thanks.
What was that one we saw last, like that they demoed earlier this week? Mark, do you remember the name of it? I think it's more digital oriented, but
yeah. Label Hub.
Label Hub, right? That's a newer one, I think, from Europe. That's
yeah, that's not so much
cloud-based.
Yeah, that one's a bit. If anybody's looked at it, I think Label Hub is they're more to the order front, to web front, to the customer, to be able to have the customer see and place orders, and so there's an order entry part of that. It's more focused in that area.
But it does some of the automation of the pre-press.
It does the automated workflow. So that part where you prep the file, pre-flight the PDF, look for any issues, all that kind of stuff is what Label Hub does.
Any other questions?
So I'm seeing a question from the Q&A chat, which was on the Role Center. Can I create a profile with setup specific to what I want and use in my system?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yes, you can. You can take any of those profiles, you can copy them as a starting point, and then you would open it up in an edit mode and go in and actually change how you want it to look and feel, what menu items are available, all of that, and then save it. And that way it becomes really handy to be able to roll that out to especially a new employee. Here's your standard setup. And from there, the user can actually personalize on top of that if they have the right permissions beyond that.
Yeah, there's in this icon, there's a personalization feature.
Yep.
And then we can add more of these tiles that are different. The user can just kind of like you do in Microsoft Office, and you can adjust your choices of your menu, etc. And we didn't get into it, but down below there are some like Power BI reports, so dashboard graphs and charts and things that you have in it, and you can add new ones as well. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Daniel on the Label Master side. How does this,
Hi, Daniel.
with existing sales order functionality, production order invoicing functionality, because it seems like it's an entirely separate process across the board, everything, even in shipping.
So I'll answer that. So if you're using Business Central today, it's probably a re-implementation to implement PrintVis because you don't use production orders. You can, and we often have clients using sales orders, but instead of using the sales order and then generating, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark. Mark, can you share your screen again and bring up an item card? If you've set up items, for instance, and you create bills of material loading, which are the standard way of using Business Central, cases are more of a product configurator that allows you, as you can see what Mark was doing, it comes up with your price, it builds your routing kind of dynamically. So if you can have a finished goods, Mark, that you've got here, and just edit it, yeah. And as you scroll down through this card, you're going to see a whole bunch of PrintVis stuff at the bottom, like PrintVis pricing, PrintVis paper, like, which is substrate. They use the term paper because they came originally from commercial print. But like all of these need to be kind of filled in. And what we found with some clients, we had a client recently who used Business Central originally for their folding carton business, and we converted them to PrintVis. They had custom added all the fields, basically, that PrintVis had already in it for themselves. But what PrintVis is doing is it's also using these fields to do its calculations and mathematics. So under the PrintVis finished goods, which I think is down a little further, Mark, right? The PrintVis finished goods tab. Yeah, and here is where you set up, how do I make this? What's the template from which this production is run? And because printing presses don't necessarily, they're not off and on, they're on and they speed up, because as you get the colors aligned and the printing is running, you can run it faster and faster and faster until you're running at full speed. So it's like a curve to the speed. So PrintVis inherently knows that. It uses speed tables and scrap tables for those purposes. And normal Business Central out of the box doesn't do any of that stuff. So you really need to move everything over.
So we just did an implementation a month and a half ago. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we're still working through that implementation specifically. So we would have to do that again, essentially.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you wouldn't be using anymore that would be kind of tossed away. One big advantage of PrintVis is you don't need the premium license either, because it replaces all of the premium features of Business Central with its own versions.
The other thing I'm thinking is we leverage for planning AFP, which is a Lano module. How does planning play into this? If all of our production goes through this now, what kind of planning do you have? I noticed you had a lot of things that you're able to pre-populate, which is great, but I see that more as, and maybe I'm wrong here, as building the quote for something new. You have a lot of options, opportunities to choose existing setups, and everything is pre-populated, which I have questions about how long that would potentially take to populate that data. But how does it work from the other side? When you're planning something and you're expecting every day to auto-generate X number of orders and things like that, how would that work?
So if you, let me give you an example. Let's say that you've quoted something to a client and you're expecting to, like it's a wine bottle label or something, and you're expecting to ship those labels all year.
What if it's
so the customer's going to just order them over and over and over again? You do it once, and then you attach, and that we were in that item card, you attach that template to that item card. When you get an order for the item, you put it in as a sales order, you run planning, and you create the production orders, the production cases to make it. It takes the estimate, and what it'll do is, if you had made an error in your speed table, for instance, 3 months ago when you quoted it, the error will be fixed down. It will use the up-to-date speed table, and it will reschedule, replan that. So I'm going to use the term routing, if you're familiar with Business Central production orders. The routing will be updated now to be more accurate. The materials will automatically be generated, so the BOM or the components required will automatically be generated. PrintVis has its own planning module. So I was going to share this. Let me see if I can jump into this really quick. And I'm going to present this PowerPoint. We didn't install the module. It always expires after 30 days in our trial copies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the next slide, and there's a YouTube video, and we'll let the YouTube video play. I don't know if you guys can hear the fancy music.
I can hear it. It's very lovely. Thank you.
Go on.
Let's take a look at the new PrintVis planning board. Similar in concept and function to a traditional Gantt chart, the PrintVis Planning Board provides a graphical interface for plotting and adjusting your production schedule with helpful color codes and groupings for printing presses and other cost centers. Along the left side of the interface, you can see our selected resources with different capacity units displayed.
If I could stop you for one moment there, this is after we've identified that we need to produce product, right? I'm approaching it more from the supply chain side, where we're trying to anticipate what we need to replenish for.
Oh, you run requisition worksheet to, yeah, you use requisition worksheet, or we have a planning module that's similar to the planning worksheet, but it's not exactly the same, that we recommend clients use. We are working to, because PrintVis themselves are not very good with the planning worksheet. So we're actually working on making case replenishment type on an item card so that you can replenish with cases and run the planning worksheet and generate your MPS.
Okay.
So we at Sabre are really, really good at the general manufacturing, the manufacturing 101. That's our claim to fame. That's what other Microsoft partners will even recommend us. And so when we're doing an implementation of Business Central standard, so to speak, we're working with the planning worksheet. We're working with replenishment methods and safety stock levels and lot accumulation periods and all of that stuff. When we go to PrintVis, they're not that familiar with it. So we've been moving some of that capability of PrintVis into those modules to allow that. So the planning should be, certainly if you were to get PrintVis today, our plan is to have that done by the fall. And you would be able to run master production scheduling of your PrintVis cases using the same planning factors you would use in standard production.
And I thought I heard you mention that for the item that you were producing previously, that a sales order would be created, but I thought everything originated from cases. If it was just what's the difference? When do we deviate?
So the cases are used to do the estimating of the product, and which produces the bill of material and the routing. So if you go back and you look at these slides here, where Mark was sort of going through, and he was saying that this is a routing. I don't know if you could see it, but this is a routing step here, and these are the components and the steps, the sort of the details related to that routing step. So it's a little bit different, because what PrintVis lets you do is it lets you do within the routing step a mathematical formula, like a product configurator. I'm going to use my fingers. So you could use, if it was Excel, you'd type some stuff in Excel and have formulas, and it would calculate, like, for each plate, what's the make ready time, and for the actual paper loading or the roll loading, what's the make ready time, et cetera, et cetera. And you'd add that up, and that would come up with the make ready. So if you're doing a 6-color, it's going to have longer setup time, longer make ready than if you're doing a 4-color. If you have a complicated extra process that gets added, and this is all done at the estimating stage. So if I have and I don't know what it would be, Mark, like you would know better than I, if there's some extra process step that the press can do, like a slit, maybe the press is doing inline slitting, that might change the run rate. And the system will just automatically have all that programmed in, and it'll generate this. This becomes a template. And I could take this, do it once, essentially, create that template and save it and associate it with the item ID. Then when I want to actually make the product, if you may recall that Mark was talking about cases, I'm going to go find where cases start. I think they're back here.
Does the case ever convert at some point into an order to be shipped, or
yes? Well, no, the case can do one of two things. Basically, the case can be like a quote. I'm trying to find which slide number the cases were on. Oh, here they are. So the case itself can be a quote, an order, or they call a case that is neither a quote nor an order, a request. So a request would be an RFQ. I have an RFQ from a customer, I need to quote it. You could get to the point where you generate a quote with the case, and then you could stop it at that point. Sometimes that's called a pre-press case. It's just quoted and sent to the customer, and then an item is created that you're going to sell to the customer later. And that case, that pre-press case, becomes the template from which any production is done. You can skip the quote stage and go right to an order with a case, in which case it's a job. It's a production job. So a case, this is what gets confusing. A case can be both just a production order in standard Business Central terminology. That's all it's there for. It's just to produce the product and put it in inventory. As an out, we added our own version of output journal that we think is more like standard production output journal. But as an output journal, you output it, it goes into inventory, consumes all the material. You have the shop floor data collection that we showed that looks like this, that your staff are able to go to a kiosk and they can touch screen or use a mouse and click on the specific job that they want to run. I think we did the sort of the walkthrough of it later. But if I go back to the cases quickly, so I could create a case, I could create it as an order, I could produce it, it goes into inventory, and I can have it soft linked to the sales order so that when the sales order created this production case, and the production case is just used to produce it, the sales order is used to ship it and invoice it. Or I could just use the case. Everything starts at a case. Don't use sales orders at all. Typically, if you build to stock and ship from the stock, or if you build a quote for a customer, but that quote then becomes a price, a committed price on some sort of pricing contract, you use sales orders. That's kind of the rule of thumb. If you do a lot of ad hoc work where the customer just wants an order created and shipped to them, and it's different every time, for instance, if it was a lot of web to print, digital, kind of like the Vistaprint of labels, and people just throw their imagery up, their graphics up, and you print them for them and ship them to them, you'd probably just use a case because it's all in one thing, and you're never going to get another order for exactly the same thing. So why do you need to create an item for it? So you think of that as also cases are good for selling things you don't want to create an item for.
So we can start from the sales order essentially. Like we want to purchase this item. We're going to go start building. Our case can be driven off that and everything. That's accurate?
Yep.
Okay.
You can start from a sales quote if you want to.
Okay.
You could produce the case. You connect the case. You do the estimating in the case. Send the sales quote off to the customer. And the nice thing about PrintVis, the cases have a lot of extra fields in them. You can see them, right? Like they have the colors, surface colors and back colors if you happen to have a two-sided, like a peel off or something that has a backside with some type on it, like you get on a shampoo bottles or medicine bottles and things like that. It'll have like the size on it. It'll have the substrate often is on here. So the cases details are more print specific. And also within these menus, there's an ability to create like almost an infinite number of extra user fields that you can create. So almost all of our customers end up using those user fields extensively. And the cases print quote letters that look more like industry standard quote letters. But you can also just use a standard sales quote, generate the quote, attach a case to the line, calculate the pricing, send the quote letter, like from the sales quote, print the quote and send it to the client. And if they accept it, then you convert that order that case to an order. Sorry, not case, excuse me, the sales quote to a sales order. And then you attach a production case to that sales order to make it now. So it creates a whole bunch of extra workflows, which there's probably 6 ways to skin the cat, as they say. And you just have to figure out for your business which is the best way to do it. So we have several tag and ticket companies that are using it. We're in the process of implementing it for a label manufacturer. There was a couple of label manufacturers we worked with in the past. So we're pretty familiar with the system and how it works in label manufacturing. Like a great example of a feature that label manufacturers need is when they're buying master rolls, they either slit them themselves or they have them slit by the supplier. But you typically want to be able to take a master roll and slit it into a bunch of smaller slit rolls. That kind of feature, things like that. Those are either inherently out of the system or we have created extra features and capabilities that we're supplying with it every time we sell it because we know the customers need that.
We are running out of time. I think I have one last question I'll pose. If anything, I'll put them in email and Jill can communicate. We produce items that are not necessarily labels. Would you see any conflict there for packaging, for instance, or anything like that?
Like flexible packaging?
Just anything that might not be label focused, not print focused, maybe. I don't necessarily see that there is. I'm just posing the question.
No, so the customers we have right now who are using PrintVis, and then we have a lot of customers who don't use PrintVis. So I got customers who make like electric cars and things, so not including those. We have labels, sleeves, flexible packaging, plastic bags, pouches, folding carton manufacturer, like a, what do you call it? A solid carton? What's that called?
Yeah, rigid
carton manufacturing, commercial and wide format. I think that's it. And then we have one of the flexible packaging operates its own extruder, so he makes film. So yeah, you shouldn't be able to surprise us too much.
Shouldn't be an issue then, right? Okay.
Components are components.
Yep. Just posing it.
Oh, and we have some that are like silk screening, and they're buying like coffee mugs and selling the material for marketing, pens and coffee mugs and stuff like that. So it'll handle all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Don't have a garment customer yet.
How can we see a demo that's possibly closer to our own processes or environment?
Mark can do a private demo with clients where they can make some requests of specific things that they'd like to see, and then Mark would set up a time and spend an hour and a half. You can download PrintVis and install it in a Business Central environment. If you are going to do that, I recommend that again, and we do this. This is a service we offer, and there's no charge for it. Mark spend an hour or two with you to go through, because you'll get the sample company, but you got to understand what you're doing, or else it'll be frustrating to play around with it. So Mark guides you through that and gives you kind of a guided tour so that you can start actually playing with it and have some knowledge of how it works. And then if you're interested in going further with that, we have other options.
Jill, I can arrange that with Mark and you as well when you have time. Okay.
Thanks, Juan.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions? We got really deep into it and we went over time.
We appreciate you doing that. Thanks.
Nothing else on my end.
Well, if any of you do have any other questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team, and we'll send you in the right direction.
Okay. Thank you.
I know there were a group of people who came from the same company.
Yep.
If you guys, there were a whole bunch of you signed up, but if you guys want to have a deeper dive into it, we'd really actually appreciate your feedback.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
And
all.
if anybody came and they weren't from that company and want to ask any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us either.
Yep.
Have a fantastic day.
You too. Bye.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.